But the thing that I always noticed was that true innovation, things that are truly innovative, are completely obvious. When someone looks at it, the first thing they think is, well, of course it's like that. How could it not be like that? And that's when you know that you've actually got a breakthrough.
So welcome to the Who's Elvis Round Here podcast, where I talk to leaders about how you get the best out of people and make the culture really tune in to make sure they're extraordinary. And today I am delighted to be joined by Mike Pell, who's a bit of a legend and somebody I've been playing with for some years. So tell us a little bit about who you are and your background, and then we're going to get into some good questions.
Sure, Chris, or should I say Elvis?
Hey,
because clearly you're the Elvis here. Hey, everyone, my name is Mike Pell. Right now, I lead the Microsoft Garage, which is Microsoft's worldwide innovation program. But in the past, I've done some incredibly fun things. I've invented the font menu. I actually invented Acrobat and PDF with some friends of mine at Adobe. I was part of the first metaverse. I've done so many innovative things over my career, I can't even remember half of them. But most importantly, I've helped people to be able to take their ideas and their passion and go do something with it. So I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Well, that's pretty Elvis. That's pretty Elvis. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So look, my first question, which I think you got to choose a story carefully here because you've got so many.
Yeah.
So what story do you love to tell that people love to hear?
So people often ask me, of all the things that I've done, because I've been involved in technology and business and design my whole career, been very fortunate to work with some incredibly smart people, but they say, what is like the coolest thing you've ever done? And I tell them it's the very first thing I ever did, which was way back, in prehistoric times at the dawn of the Macintosh. There was this really annoying feature where when you went to pick a font, you would see a list of font names that were all drawn in the same face, so you couldn't tell them apart. Which was incredibly frustrating because you'd be, this is at the beginning of word processing and desktop publishing. And so you'd be picking these font names and it would come out completely wrong. And you would do this over and over and over. It was ridiculous. It was so annoying that I literally learned how to hack the Apple system to fix the font menu and create something that we called menu fonts, which is that stylized font menu. But in essence, it was the simplest thing I've ever done, one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it was such a beautiful, clean, simple, straightforward design that to this day I still love it the best out of all the things I've done because it was solving a problem that was just ridiculous, and it had to be done.
I love it, and I'm working with a team at the moment on innovation here in New York, and we were talking about how energy and emotion is so important for driving good ideas. And I was sharing that some of the best stuff I've ever done is because it's annoyed me. which is what this is a classic case in point.
Yeah. And there's another great story, Chris, that you and I probably have talked about. I work in an innovation program, right? And so some people think that innovation can be done on demand, like you snap your fingers or say, hey, I need that done by the end of the day, and something incredibly innovative is going to pop out. We both know that's not how it works. Innovation is a very messy business, right? It takes quite a while. Sometimes you have no idea if something is actually going to work or not. But the thing that I always noticed was that true innovation, things that are truly innovative, are completely obvious. When someone looks at it, the first thing they think is, well, of course it's like that. How could it not be like that? And that's when you know that you've actually got a breakthrough, which is how I define innovation, which is that it's not incremental. And I always say to people, there is no such thing as incremental innovation. It doesn't exist. There's incremental improvement, but nothing about incremental innovation. True innovations are huge leaps forward. It's so obviously better than whatever existed before. That's why it should be called innovative. So I don't like that people overuse and overload the word innovation.
Yeah. No, I get that. Now, obviously, to deliver something step change like that has that value, but that it's so obvious when you've done it. There's a big process that goes through it. Getting people to be able to tap into, what they see that's very different and unique to them. They have to have the confidence to be able to do. There's a lot of human facets that you need to be able to really get working well to make it happen. In your experience, what's the single most important thing in releasing that genius in people?
Yeah. People have to be willing to let go of all of their preconceived notions about something. And it's hard, easier said than done.
It is.
But you have to literally step back, erase whatever's in your mind and rethink about something. And oftentimes it takes someone very creative being a partner to you to push you or to question you or to make you have to, sort of reassess everything to get to that point where you're like, wow, maybe we never really did need to do it that way. Why have we been doing it this way for the last 20 years? That's ridiculous. And sometimes it's because of technology or societal change or other things that make you reconsider, why you're thinking about something the way you are. And, this is messy. It's not something that you can sort of do on demand. But when you're pushed, there are techniques you can use. And one of them is stepping back and just letting go of everything and imagining how it could be. And we talked about this earlier. One of the things I ask people to do very often is tell me of all the things they could do, what would have the most impact? And that's a very specific thing. It's not about how much money they can make, how efficient they could be, like how they could serve the most people. Impact is a very important term to consider because, at its essence, it means it moves people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. And being able to have almost a blank sheet and actually let go of all your preconceptions takes a certain amount of confidence. Because actually, what tends to happen is,
or in naivety,
or one of the two, yeah. But a lot of senior leaders, they've built their identity on what they've done in the past, right? And that gives them their assurity and their confidence. And actually, to say you've got to let all that go for this, and actually we're going to start again. You have to create the right conditions for them to feel good about that.
Yeah, and often, so I'm very good at facilitating, as you are. And the reason that we're both very good at moderating, facilitating, getting people to be able to do these things is that we listen very carefully and we listen to what people don't say. And often with a senior leader, you can get them to talk about something to a point, but as you said, maybe they don't want to let themselves go in front of their, the people that work for them. It's funny, we built something called the reality room where we had VR headsets that people could put on. The executives wouldn't try them on because they didn't want to mess up their hair.
Oh wow!
Yeah, no, it's like true
There's
story.
An insight.
Yeah, but what you need sometimes is you need a dedicated facilitator. You need someone outside of the loop to be able to really hear what people are saying, say the things that they won't say, and help them to push their idea forward. And so oftentimes, whenever people are trying to brainstorm or come up with new ideas, I say, you know what, you actually need somebody disassociated to help you to move this idea along because you probably can't do it yourselves in the same way that someone else could.
And there is a real power to having somebody who's external and not vested in that business, and they have a naivety. They can call things out.
Yeah, they're not trying to sell you something. Yeah. They're not trying to, sort of go after a particular political agenda. They're just there to help you with your ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, question. So I look at business quite regularly and go, why on earth are we doing this, right? Mm-hmm. There are facets of business that really do annoy me. A bit like you and the fonts, right? Yeah. The one that I often reference is annual appraisals, which are just it's just the wrong way to get great stuff from people.
But how do we know how much to pay you?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about budgeting, right? Yeah. So is there anything in business where you look at it, you go, why on earth are we still doing that? Yeah. And that you might have some ways of shaking up?
Yes, absolutely. 20 years ago, I was living in Silicon Valley, and I was part of a startup culture. I was looking at how businesses that were moving very quickly in the Valley. And one thing stuck out to me that to this day has never been addressed. I'm a very visual person. Mm-hmm. When people talk to me about business and process and models, I imagine things in my mind.
Sure.
Business is always constantly in motion, yet we always depict it as static snapshots in time, like a spreadsheet or a chart or a graph. And so to me, it boggles my mind that we don't see business as a living, breathing system like it truly is. Very chaotic, always changing. And so that's one thing that I just can't believe that we haven't got to. So I wrote a book called Visualizing Business to get people to see what I see. So that was one of the things that's always bugged me. And I want to do something with that.
I like that. And then look, last question for today. I'll be very interested in your take on this. What
He
gives you?
wants to know where the best pizza joint is. And stuff
That's
like
next. That's definitely next. So, what gives you hope?
Oh, everything. I'm an optimist.
Mm.
So I love people like you. Like, people are fascinating. What gives me hope is that the human spirit and ingenuity is boundless. We humans are clever creatures. And I just love, and I'm always very impressed and very optimistic and hopeful by what's possible when people really put their minds and their hearts to it.
Well, look, I couldn't agree more with that
I
sentiment.
know. That's why
You
we get along.
That's exactly why we get along. And actually, a lot of your role is about inspiring people to be able to do that, to solve the big problems that we have, in business on the planet. And in doing so, I guess you have hope abundant in your work and in your life. So, hey, what exciting stuff you got coming up?
For me, it's doing what I talked about. Getting a little bit more down the path of helping people see the things that maybe they can't see because they're just invisible in business the way that they are. And helping more of you to go off and chase down your dreams. Take those things that you know to be true and make them real.
Wonderful. Well, Mike, it's been an absolute joy having you on. I'm sure everyone's got a lot from this session. Tune into the next one. Thank you, Mike.
See you soon.